Welcome to my video. I'll trust you'll find it helpful and informative. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. So we are going to look at Module 7 today, and it's the Introduction to Computing. So there's a brief history of computers there. So old Charles Babbage in 1837, he already came up with the idea for the analytical engine. It was in concept only, because Charles had the same problem that most of us are experiencing today. He didn't have the power to drive his machine. Okay, and that was because electricity, as we know it, was not invented yet. Okay, and really, so nothing really happened for about 100 years. Babbage's idea remained an idea, and really that was it. And then World War II broke out, and suddenly there was a real need to break the German's codes by the British. And so Colossus was built, and Colossus was the first electronic digital programmable computer. And and it was really built for the purposes of breaking the German codes, and it was successful. The interesting thing is that even after breaking the code, they didn't let the Germans know about it for a while, because they didn't want, they would actually allow the Germans to attack certain targets rather than letting them know that that actually already broke their code. And then just after the war, in 1946, at the University of Pennsylvania, ENIAC was built, and ENIAC was the USA's first general-purpose digital electronic computer. So there it is, 109 years from the time that Charles Babbage came up with the concept until a practical machine was actually built that was for general purpose and not just for military purposes anymore. And then, of course, something happened on the hardware field, and really we went from the vacuum tube to the transistor to the microchip to the microprocessor. And what all of this meant is simply that the machines became smaller, because when Colossus was used during World War II, if you've seen the movies before, it was an entire room with machines. Even ENIAC was for an entire room. But now, because you didn't need vacuum tubes anymore, or even transistors, but the microprocessor, you could build a much smaller machine. And so in 1975, the Altair 8800 was produced as the first PC. Then 2 years later, Apple came up with something that was a little bit more user-friendly, and that was in 1977. Then 1981, IBM came up with the first, what we would call a PC. And a PC is a personal computer. Not really that long ago. I mean, for me, that was 1981 was in my grade 7 year. And I was afraid of the machines, so I didn't do computer technology or computer information in high school. I didn't trust the machine, to my detriment. Now, could have been much further now. By 1984, 3 years since 1981, PC sales had reached 15 billion in revenue, and Microsoft became the dominant software provider. That was back in 1984. And then for 4 years, everything was honky and we had no problems. But then in 1988, computer viruses became a problem, and they've been a problem ever since. And in the meantime, supercomputers changed the way we live. And in 1993, IBM, funny enough, once again, they're always the leaders. They're really not that good at marketing. It seems like some of the other guys like Apple and Microsoft are better at marketing. But in terms of being the drivers of technology, IBM came up with the first smartphone in 1993. And of course, since then, there's just been ongoing developments. One of the new developments that happened just this week is that those of us who have bigger and big enough processors, what now? Sorry, guys. I just saw a message here and was trying to respond to it. Oh, no, that's fine. It wasn't in your group that message came through. That's one of the weird things about chat. If something happens in another group, we all see it. Okay. So one of the things that happened this last week is that Microsoft is now allowing those of us with big enough processors to upgrade to Windows 11. And doing that upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 took me all of 7 hours yesterday. And but now it's done. And you see one of the results of going from 10 to 11 is while I am in Teams, I'm actually able to use the presentation function in PowerPoint, because if you remember, we had a problem with that before. Okay. So that's just a brief history of computers. And as I say, everything has been going on in the meantime. Okay, so what is a personal computer? A personal computer is a small, inexpensive computer for individuals. Now, when I say inexpensive, I know that some computers can be pretty expensive, but they're relatively inexpensive. I mean, you're not going to pay R1,000,000 for a computer like you would have if you tried to buy one of those first computers. To communicate with a computer, we use computer language. And hi, look at what we are using. Computer language consists of the binary digits 1 and 0 only. And I've explained to you before how that works. So we call a single binary digit a bit. It is the smallest unit of data in a computer. And a PC that can store more bits will be able to process more data. Okay. Today, the minimum specifications to run basic software are the following. At least a dual-core processor of 2.4 gigahertz, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and a 320 gigabyte hard drive with 5,400 revolutions per minute. Really, your solid-state drives can be a little smaller than that, and they will still work, but it really doesn't matter. I haven't seen anything smaller than a 500 gigabit hard drive, whether it's a normal spinning one or a solid state drive, in years. Okay. And really a dual core processor at 2.4 gigahertz, it's not really going to help you if you're trying to run Windows 11. You will need an i7. Okay. So GB means gigabyte. And there are 8 bits in a single byte. And giga means 10 to the power 9, or just then, of course, a 1 with 9 zeros. I don't know why that one of mine only has 8 zeros. It's a typo. Okay. So 1 gigabyte means 800 million bits. I think, yeah, 10 to the power 9. Yeah, should be not 90. Sorry, something went wrong there. Okay, then the storage capacity, and this thing with the storage capacity comes up in assignment 3, and it comes up in the exam. So 8 bits equals 1 byte. 1024 bytes equals 1 kilobyte. 1024 kilobytes equals 1 megabyte. 1024 megabytes equals 1 gigabyte. And 124 gigabyte equals 1 terabyte. And 1 terabyte equals a petabyte. Or 1024 terabytes equals a petabyte. Now that you won't have in your computers. Our hard drives these days are normally about 1 terabyte in size. If you buy a really big one, it might be 2 terabyte. And 1 terabyte is really equal to 20 million typed pages. Okay, so you would think that a terabyte would be enough, but these days it's actually not. I've seen people, one of my external hard drives that's a terabyte big, got filled very quickly because it was in the time before Netflix, and I used to upload series on that thing, and the poor external hard drive of 1 terabyte didn't cope for too long. Okay. So let's have a look at personal computer hardware, and then we are later going to compare it with PC software. So what is the hardware? It is the electronic parts used to put a computer system together. That's what your hardware is. So if you can touch it and play around with it, that's the hard box. And we distinguish between the internal components and the external components. Your internal components are really the stuff that you will find in the box or in your laptop. So first thing is the motherboard. This is the system board with chips, circuits, and slots, and everything is attached to the motherboard. Think of the motherboard as the ship to which everything must be linked. Okay, then on that motherboard you will find your central processing unit, your CPU, and that is the unit that retrieves, decode, and execute instructions, and that also do the math operations through the arithmetic logical unit, and then it sends back the results. Okay, so your CPU really is your computer. If your processor is not big enough or cannot handle what you want to do with it, the only way to fix it is really to buy a new machine. Okay, that's where all the money goes into. Then you have your RAM, your random access memory. It's the temporary memory that requires a power source. Okay, so all of these things must be aligned, by the way. Your central, your CPU and your RAM and your hard disk must all kind of be able to work together for your computer to run at the optimized speed. What we had at the office, Cara and I got these new machines that we are paying a lot of money for from Nashua, and a fantastic processor, i7. And then when we wanted to use the machines, they were ridiculously slow. Okay, ran a system check, nothing wrong with the hard drive. Hard drive's pretty big, and they had only given us 4 gigs of RAM, and that slowed the machine down. So then we had to send them back, pay more money, and now we're sitting with 12 gig of RAM, and that seems to be fine. My machine is working fine now, and if Cara complains, I'm going to ignore her. Okay. So then your hardest drive is, or your solid state drive is just your permanent storage device that's in your computer, and on that you will find the read-only memory. So you don't use that to do operations really. You only read information from your hard drive. And then of course all of that is fine, but we go back to the initial problem that I said. You need a good power supply unit, and what your computer's power supply unit does is it converts 240 volt that Eskom sometimes deliver to us if they feel like it, to 3 volt, 5 volt, or 12 volt input. And of course, if your transformer breaks and you put a full 240 volts into your machine, then you are going to have a beautiful explosion. And then also as part of your motherboard, as part of your box really, that's linked to your motherboard are the ports, and these ports are for external components. And you see that I've given you a little asterisk there next to the ports, and that is because on the next slide, I'm going to try and show you the variety of ports that are available. And yeah, they've made things pretty interesting, and they're also changing. Not that there's been any changes in the last year or so. Okay. Then when it comes to the external components, guys, you must distinguish between the input, the output, and the storage devices and the communication devices. So these are all things that you link to your box or to your main machine. Firstly, the input devices, which is the mouse, the keyboard, and the webcam. And as I am sitting here with you now, I'm actually using all three of those. Then you have your output devices, which is your monitor. Monitor is just another word for screen, your printer, your speakers, and your headphones. Okay, another input device that I didn't put in there is, of course, the microphone. If my Microsoft is muted and you can't hear me, then nothing is going in. If you are not switching on your speakers, then you can't hear me. Okay. Then, of course, there are external storage devices like flash drives and external hard drives. And once upon a moon, many years ago, that was also DVD and CD drives. You still can get them, but when I got this new machine of mine, so there is no CD or DVD drive anymore. They're thinking to themselves, hey, if you want to watch movies, get Netflix. And then, of course, we have the communication devices like your Wi-Fi router, your Bluetooth, or there are also other near service devices that you can use. But these are still the most common communication devices that we use, the Wi-Fi router and the Bluetooth. Okay, I talked about the ports that you will find at the back of your machine, and these ports are used to connect external components to the tower. Now, the one on the left is more the way it used to be, where you had a specific parallel printer for your port for your printer, and then you had these little male and female serial ports for screen and modems. And if you don't know how to distinguish between a male and a female serial port, go and speak to somebody that can tell you why the one has little holes and the one has the little pointy things that come out. Maybe your father or mother or pastor. That's not my job. At your age, I think that should be absolutely crystal clear. Okay, then you had your two PS ports, the one for the mouse and the one for the keyboard. But really, now if you buy a machine, you do not see any of those ports anymore, really. What you see is the LAN port for the network cable, as we have it here on the right, audio port for headphones and mic, different USB ports for all other components. And there you can see there's an HDMI port there and another HD port that you can use. And really, this is what we expect to see if we buy a machine these days. Okay. When we talk about software, guys, we must distinguish between system software and application software. So software is effectively the interface between the user and the hardware. So what is the software? So software allows you to use the hardware. Okay, if you don't have the right software on your machine, then the only thing you can use your PC for is to hit somebody over the head, or I don't know, as a doorstop or something like that. But without the right software, a computer is really just a thing standing there. Okay, so what is the system software? System software is used for operating the hardware. Okay, the operating software or OS and the drivers installed with it. Okay, so that, guys, is Windows 10 or Apple Mac or Windows 11. That is your operating software. The user doesn't interact with it as a rule, as it works in the background. Okay, don't go and try and mess with your system software. Okay, you are not a computer expert. If you mess with it, it's gonna stop working. Okay, it can run independently, and it provides a platform for the application software. Okay, so and of course your system software can only be matched with certain application software, or rather the other way around. Your application software can only be matched with certain system software. If you are using Windows 10, then you will use Windows Office as your application software. You can't use Apple application software on Windows OS or the other way around. Okay. Then with regard to your application software, it is used to perform specific tasks. So Outlook has a specific task, Word has a specific task, PowerPoint has a specific task, all of that. It is installed to the user's requirements. You're only going to put the application software that you plan to use on your machine. It's also a problem that all of us have. We often put application software on that we don't use, and then it just takes space on our machines, and then after a while we wonder why our machine becomes slow. Okay, the user interacts with the program, okay, all the time. It cannot run independently and needs an operating software platform. So I've given you the examples there: Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So the system software can have a graphical user interface that will make it easier for the user to work the associated application software that will have similar elements. So for instance, Windows. So Windows is the graphical user interface, and we call it Windows because it opens up little windows. Every time you open up a different application, there's another window, a little square that opens up, and it just makes it easier for us to work on our machines if we have that. Okay, then a thing that I can guarantee you will be in the exam. I guarantee you it is in your assignment 3 as well. Not that I've seen your assignment 3 yet. Okay, so this is the IPOS cycle. And in IPOS, the I is for input, the P is for process, the O is for output, and the S is for storage. And there is a cycle here. Okay, and what it means is the hardware and the software works together according to this cycle. Okay, it is the process by which data is transformed into usable information. So I'll give you an example there. We have the data, words, number, and pictures. Okay, and then I use my input devices, the keyboard, the mouse, or the scanner, and I upload it to my machine. And then once it is in my machine, the CPU, the central processing unit, does things with it. Okay, usable things. The machine language is turned into normal language, and other things like that happen. And then we will see an output on a monitor or printer or speaker. Okay, so my physical voice is not traveling to you. My physical voice is going into this machine of mine, where the processor deals with it, the input that's coming through from the microphone, and then it sends it so that you can access it through your speaker again. Okay. And of course, then we have useful information. So that information will be a report, a publication, a video, anything. I mean, after all, we are. And now I'm thinking, did I ever start this recording? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Even if I didn't, as I say, it is just a simple storage thing. It's all just theory. So good luck for you who's actually listening. Then, of course, once we've done all of this, we want this output of ours. We don't want to print everything out. Okay, we can, but we don't want to. So we want to store this somewhere, and it is stored on our RAM, our ROM, on our flash drive, in the cloud, but it must be stored somewhere, and it always is stored somewhere. Okay. Now I am recording. I don't know why for a moment I was worried there. Okay. So that is the IPOS cycle. You must know it. You must know this little figure that I've got in here. This thing is in the exam for a fact. Okay. So when it comes to PC upgrades, you find that your PC is not working the way you want it to work. What do? Okay. You can do two things. Either you can have a hardware update or you can have a software update. Now, you will start with a software update and hope it works. And if it doesn't, then really you have no option but to go on and use the hardware update or engage in a hardware update. So software update, disable your startup programs. Wow, in the beginning, by default, teams want to start at startup, even when you're not using it, and slows your machine down. Then clean up your system files. You will know that, especially on your phones, guys. Remember, your phones are also just little computers, little PCs that you have in your hand. And if you don't clean up the cache on your different applications, then pretty soon the space on your phone is filled and you wonder what's going wrong. Okay. Then you need to defragment your hard drive. Now, really, these days, with the antiviral software that we have, it also has a function where your machine is optimized all along at the same time, and it happens in the background. I haven't had to run a defrag in the last 10 years because the software that I'm using that as my antivirus just does that as well. Okay. So, and of course, that's just Windows security these days. You actually don't need anything else. Keep the PC virus and malware free. That is why you have an antiviral package. Really, don't go and mess on sites that are dodgy. That's if you don't go to dodgy sites, really you use a normal search engine like Google. Even if you don't have antiviral software on your machine, it will still be pretty fine. Okay, and then from time to time, you need to upgrade your operating system. Now, also, I think with Windows 10 and also now with Windows 11, it will just happen automatically on a day-to-day basis. But those of you who are currently working on Windows 10 and you want to upgrade to Windows 11, like I said to you earlier, you are looking at a 7-hour upgrade if you are going to run that. Okay, and now you've done all of that and your machine is still slow, and then you do what I normally do. You shout at your machine to find that it doesn't work, because from the IPOS cycle we know that my voice is not an input device. Okay, so the more I shout at my computer, the sore my voice is going to be, but I'm not maintaining anything, not getting to anything to work. So now what do you do? Well, one thing you can do is you can replace your hard disk drive with a solid state drive, which is a lot quicker. Remember, the solid state drive is smaller but quicker. And the more stuff you do in the cloud, the smaller your hard drive needs to be, because you are not storing things on your hard drive per se. You are really storing things in the cloud, and then a solid state drive will be the better way to go. Then upgrade your RAM. Normally your motherboard will have 2 slots for RAM, and what they do, the manufacturers, is they put 4 gigs of RAM in there. Now that 4 gig card can be replaced with an 8 gig card, and then you can put in a second 8 gig card, and in the end you can then have about 16 gig of RAM standard. Okay, without any other hardware changes. Of course, or you can just leave in your current 4-bit RAM and add another 8, and then you will have 12 gig RAM, and then that should also solve the problem for you. You can upgrade your graphics card, especially if you're an online gamer. You're pretty quickly going to find that your machine cannot cope, and then you will have to upgrade your graphics card. That'll be expensive, so if just brace yourself for that. If you're going to be a serious gamer, you're going to have to spend serious money. Install the latest drivers for hardware. Really, these days, no need to do that. You can simply, it actually happens in the background. The drivers are just down. So drivers are actually software, and those drivers are updated for the hardware all the time. And then clean your box with canned air. Okay, when you think your computer is dirty, do not go and try and wash it with detergent. Okay, that's going to break your machine. So if you clean it, you can clean it with canned air that you buy in a can. Really, guys, I have used a vacuum cleaner to vacuum and blow my machines for my entire life, and without any need for canned air. Canned air is expensive, but hey, if you want to use canned air, who am I to be in your way? Okay. Then making use of cloud services can improve performance as the programs doesn't have to be stored on the machine, and that saves disk space. Okay. And I've given you some examples of cloud computing using a search engine like Google, or using a web browser like Chrome that is not on your machine, it is actually in the cloud, using a web-based email service like Gmail, or using a web-based software like Google Docs. Personally, I feel that the web-based software like Google Docs, even the stuff that is the Windows stuff that's freely available in the cloud, is, for me, is not exactly the same as those that's on my desktop, but maybe that just shows my age and nothing else.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you found it valuable, please subscribe and like. Thank you.